Hello there, and welcome back to the Serene Scroll. I'm so glad you found your way here to this quiet space, a place to let the noise of the day gently fade away. Tonight, we begin a journey not across land or sea, but through the vast, silent ocean of space, to a world painted in rust and ochre. So find a comfortable position and allow your body to feel heavy, supported, and at ease. Let your breath soften. Before we embark, if these stories offer you a sanctuary for your mind, a gentle place to rest, consider softly tapping the like button and subscribing to the channel. It helps this quiet corner of the universe grow. And now, close your eyes and let us begin. Feel for a moment the gentle, unspoken pressure that holds you. It is the steady hand of gravity, the planet's silent embrace. We are born into it live every moment within its domain, and so rarely do we notice its constant faithful presence. It is the reason the air we breathe stays close, forming a soft blue veil around our world. It is the reason the oceans do not fly off into space, but instead cradle the continents in their deep, rhythmic tides. It is the force that pulls a seed down into the dark earth so that it might anchor itself and reach for the light. We exist at the bottom of a deep, life-giving well. A well of gravity 40,000 kilometers in circumference, carved into the fabric of space-time by the sheer mass of our world. From our vantage point, deep within this well, the universe appears as a tapestry of distant lights seen through a narrow opening above. The walls of our well are the layers of the atmosphere, a shimmering protective boundary that makes the sun's light soft and the sky a brilliant, benevolent blue. Down here at the bottom, life has flourished in impossible diversity. It is warm, it is wet, it is safe. Everything we have ever known, every story ever told, every love ever felt has happened here, within the gentle confines of Earth's gravity well. For millennia, this was not a well, but the entire universe. The ground was absolute, the sky was a dome, and the stars were fixed points of light in a celestial ceiling. There was no concept of climbing out, for there was nowhere else to go. But the human mind is restless. We learn to look up not just with our eyes, but with our curiosity. We charted the wandering lights that moved against the backdrop of fixed stars, the planets. And one in particular captured our imagination with its fiery amber glow. Mars, the red planet. It was close enough to be a world, but far enough to be a mystery. It seemed to hang in the night sky, not as a point of light, but as a promise, a question waiting for an answer. In the late 19th century, an Italian astronomer named Giovanni Schiaparelli peered through his telescope at this tantalizing neighbor. He meticulously mapped the planet's surface, and in his notes, he described faint, linear features he called canali. In Italian, the word simply means channels, natural formations, like the English Channel. But when his work was translated, the word became canals. The implication was electric. Canals are not natural. They are built. They are a sign of intelligence, of engineering, of a civilization struggling against a dying, drying world. This idea was seized upon by an American astronomer, a wealthy Bostonian named Percival Lowell. He built his own state-of-the-art observatory in the clear, high-altitude air of Arizona, dedicating his life and his fortune to studying the canals of Mars. Through his lens, he saw not just a few lines, but an intricate planet-spanning network of waterways, a heroic feat of engineering designed to carry water from the polar ice caps to the thirsty equatorial cities of a sophisticated Martian race. His books and lectures painted a vivid romantic portrait of an older, wiser civilization, a vision that captivated the public imagination. We know now, of course, that Lowell was mistaken. The canals were an illusion, a combination of faint, disconnected surface features and the tendency of the human brain to see patterns and lines where none exist. There were no great Martian cities, and yet the power of his dream endured. The idea of Mars as a place of life, a sister world, lodged itself deep in our collective consciousness. It didn't matter that the canals weren't real. What was real was the longing, the profound human desire to look out into the silent cosmos and find a reflection of ourselves, to know that we are not alone in the vast, dark emptiness. To turn that dream into a reality, to truly reach out and touch that red soil, we must first face the fundamental challenge of our existence. We must climb out of the well. And this requires a specific, almost magical feat. It requires escape velocity. Imagine throwing a stone into the air. It rises, slows, and inevitably the patient hand of gravity pulls it back down. Throw it harder, and it will fly higher, but it will still return. But if you could throw that stone at a precise speed, 11.2 kilometers per second, or about 25,000 miles per hour, something incredible would happen. The stone would continue to slow as it rose, but gravity's pull would weaken with distance at the exact same rate. It would never quite stop, but it would also never fall back. It would escape. It would be free, drifting into the quiet ocean of the solar system. This is the price of a ticket to the cosmos. An immense expenditure of energy, a controlled, violent explosion that must be perfectly harnessed to push a vessel upwards faster and faster until it hits that magic number and slips the bonds of Earth. It is a brute force act, but one that requires the utmost delicacy and precision. It is the act of defying the single most constant force in our lives, of telling the well that has cradled us for our entire existence, not this time. And so, we must ask the question that Lowell's dream inspires: why? Why spend so much treasure and effort and risk to climb out of our perfectly good home? The answer is as complex as we are. It is partly for survival, the deep-seated instinct to spread our species beyond a single fragile basket. It is partly for science, the unquenchable thirst for knowledge, to understand the story of our solar system and the nature of life itself. But perhaps most profoundly, it is an act of spirit. It is the same impulse that drove our ancestors to cross oceans on rafts of wood and reed, to climb mountains simply because they were there. To explore is to affirm that we are more than just creatures of habit, bound to our familiar shores. To reach for Mars is to declare that the human imagination is not constrained by the physical limits of our world. Today, our view of Mars is far more nuanced than Lowell's. We have sent our robotic envoys, our proxies, small-wheel geologists named Sojourner, and Spirit Curiosity and Perseverance. They have sent us back images, not of canals, but of a world of breathtaking, desolate beauty. A world of vast, silent craters, of towering, dormant volcanoes, of canyons that dwarf any on Earth, and of fine, rust-colored dust that covers everything in a blanket of silence. They have tasted the thin carbon dioxide air and drilled into the ancient rock, searching for the fossilized signatures of a time when Mars, too, may have been at the bottom of a wet, life-giving well. These rovers are the first tentative fingers we have dipped over the edge of our own well, reaching across the void to touch another world. They are the fulfillment of a long-held dream, but they are also just the beginning. They have prepared the way. They have shown us the path. And now we stand at the precipice looking up from the bottom of our deep blue home. We have dreamt the dream of Mars, and we have understood the physics of the climb. All that remains is the journey itself. But to leave this cradle requires more than a dream or a calculation of velocity. It requires a new kind of ark, a self-contained world in miniature, a bubble of life carefully crafted to withstand the harsh vacuum and radiation of interplanetary space. It is a machine, yes, a marvel of engineering, but for its long and lonely voyage, it must also become a home. It is a ship of steel and circuits that must become an extension of humanity itself, a vessel that will be repaired, remade, and perhaps even reborn on its long journey through the dark. The journey has truly begun, not in the fire and fury of the launch, but here in the profound and unbroken quiet that follows. Our vessel, a silent needle threading its way through the black velvet of space, is now the only world that matters. It is more than a machine of metal and wire. It is an ark, a self-contained biosphere carrying a precious, fragile cargo of life across an ocean of cosmic indifference. And like any living thing, its very essence is change. Ancient philosophers on Earth imagined a puzzle, a thought experiment, about a hero's vessel called the Ship of Theseus. After a long and arduous journey, the ship returns to its home port, weathered and worn. Over the years, its caretakers replace each rotting plank of wood, each frayed rope, each tattered sail, until eventually, not a single one of the original pieces remains. The question they asked, then we can ask now, gazing upon the gleaming walls of our interplanetary home. Is it still the same ship our vessel was designed with this very paradox at its heart? It is a ship that must rebuild itself to survive a craft whose identity is found not in its static components, but in its persistent evolving form. It is a ship of Theseus rendered in steel and carbon fiber. Consider the very air you are breathing. It is not a finite supply rationed out from pressurized tanks. It is a living flowing system, a closed loop that mimics the grand cycles of a planet. With every gentle exhale, you release carbon dioxide into the cabin's atmosphere. You might hear, if you listen closely, the faintest whisper of fans pulling this air away, guiding it through a delicate dance of chemistry and biology. It flows through filters that capture impurities, then into bioreactors, where colonies of algae bathed in the soft purple glow of LED lights eagerly consume your breath. They feast on the carbon dioxide, and through the ancient magic of photosynthesis, release fresh, pure oxygen back into the environment. The air entering your lungs now was just hours ago part of the breath of a crewmate, part of the metabolic cycle of a plant. The ship breathes with you. Its lungs are our lungs. Each day, a small piece of the atmosphere is unmade and remade, a constant renewal that keeps this world alive. The same is true for water, the most precious of all resources out here. Every drop is sacred. The water used for washing the condensation that gathers on cool surfaces, even the moisture in every exhaled breath is collected. It is purified through a series of filters, distillers, and processors until it is cleaner than any water drawn from a mountain spring on Earth. There is a quiet hum that permeates the ship, the sound of this lifeblood circulating. It is the sound of survival, the rhythm of a system that wastes nothing. This constant reclamation means the water flowing through the ship's pipes has been part of countless cycles. It has sustained the crew, nourished the plants in the hydroponics bay, and been reborn again and again. Each time a pump whirs or a valve clicks open, a tiny plank of our ship is replaced, its molecular form renewed for the next leg of the journey. And the journey itself is not one of brute force, but of immense, almost unimaginable patience. The initial violent thrust that tore us from Earth's gravity has long since faded. Now our momentum comes from a source far more subtle. At the vessel's stern, a faint, ethereal blue glow emanates from the ion drives. These engines do not explode with fire. They whisper. They use powerful magnetic fields to accelerate charged particles of xenon gas to incredible speeds, pushing them out into the void. The thrust from a single particle is infinitesimal, less than the weight of a piece of paper resting on your hand. But it is constant. Hour after hour, day after day, week after week, this gentle, persistent push steadily adds to our velocity. It is a ghost-like force building over time, an embodiment of the idea that a small, consistent effort can move worlds. We are not riding an explosion. We are sailing on a steady, silent breeze across the solar system. This gentle voyage takes place in an environment of invisible hazards. The cosmos is filled with radiation, high-energy particles cast off by our own sun and distant exploding stars. Left unprotected, this constant shower would shred the delicate machinery of life. And so our ship is a fortress, but its walls are not just thick metal. The designers understood that one of the best shields against radiation is water. The very same water that sustains the crew is stored in the outer layers of the hull, its molecules absorbing and scattering the harmful particles. We are living inside our own shield, protected by the same element that gives us life. It is a beautiful, elegant solution, a membrane of water separating the fragile ecosystem within from the raw, untamed energy of the universe without. Yet no shield is perfect, and no machine is immortal. Over a journey of many months, components will fail. A sensor will burn out. A microchip will falter. A pump will degrade. On Earth, this would be a simple matter of repair. Here, there is no one to call. And so the ship is designed to heal itself. It is a body that monitors its own health. A network of millions of sensors forms its nervous system, constantly checking for pressure drops, temperature fluctuations, or voltage irregularities. When an error is detected, the ship's central intelligence reroutes power, activates backup systems, and in many cases, performs the repair itself. Small spider-like drones patrol the service corridors, their optical sensors scanning for signs of wear. If they find a failing module, they can unbolt it, replace it with a spare from storage, and carry the old one to the recycling fabricator. Here, the damaged part is broken down to its raw elements, ready to be reformed into a new component when needed. Every day, the ship is subtly different from the day before. A circuit board in the navigation array is replaced. A valve in the life support system is swapped out. A new solar panel film is extruded and laid over an older, less efficient one. The ship that arrives at Mars will not be atom for atom the same one that left Earth. It will have shed parts of itself and grown new ones, constantly adapting, constantly renewing. It is in every meaningful way the ship of Theseus sailing an ocean of stars. Its identity, we come to realize, does not reside in its original material. It resides in its purpose, in its unwavering form, and in the continuous, unbroken chain of existence it maintains for the life within its walls. The ship is a process, not an object, a verb, not a noun. It is a testament to the idea that true resilience is not about being unchanging, but about having the capacity for endless regeneration. And as we drift through this silent void, cocooned within this marvel of self-sustaining engineering, a new question begins to surface. We are surrounded by systems of perfect redundancy and automated repair, a world designed to maintain its physical integrity against the harshness of space. But what of the most complex, most fragile systems aboard the ship can replace a faulty pump and mend a broken circuit, but it cannot mend a frayed spirit or replace a worn-out hope? The ultimate journey is not the one undertaken by this vessel of steel and water, but the one unfolding within the inner cosmos of each crew member's mind. For it is there in the quiet, unmappable territory of human consciousness that the true challenges of this long voyage will be met. Ancient philosophers on earth spoke of the mind as a world unto itself, a private universe of thought and feeling that each of us carries within. But here, suspended between the sun and our destination, that is no longer a metaphor. It is a literal truth, an engineering requirement for survival. For every system that regulates the air, recycles the water, and powers our vessel, there is a parallel, unwritten system that must regulate the soul. Out here, the most complex and delicate environment we must manage is not the one contained within these metal walls, but the one contained within our own skulls. Each member of the crew is the caretaker of a private inner cosmos. Think of it as a terrarium, a sealed vessel of glass containing a miniature living world. Before our journey, this terrarium was open to the earth. It was nourished by shifting sunlight, the scent of rain, the unpredictable winds of daily life, the vast and varied ecosystem of 7 billion other minds. It drew strength and resilience from that connection. Now that vessel has been sealed. The light is artificial and constant. The air is filtered and unchanging. The only other souls are the few who share this capsule with you. And in this closed system, every element must be perfectly balanced, or the entire garden withers. The first challenge is the silence, but not the silence of sound. The ship is never truly quiet. There is the constant low hum of life support, the gentle whir of fans, the soft clicks of instruments, a mechanical lullaby. The true challenge is the psychological silence, the great echoing void left by the absence of Earth. On the ground, we are saturated with novelty. New faces, new weather, new sounds, new problems. Our minds evolve to process this constant stream of information. Here, novelty is a rare and precious commodity. The corridors are the same each day. The view from the port, while magnificent, changes with a slowness that defies human patience. The faces are the same, beloved and respected, but finite. In such an environment, the mind can begin to turn inward in on itself. Small anxieties left untended can grow like weeds in the unchanging climate, choking out healthier thoughts. A minor disagreement, a misplaced word can fester without the diluting effect of a larger social world to put it in perspective. This is the core of our psychological training to become master gardeners of our own minds. We learn to identify the first shoots of resentment or fear and gently uproot them. We learn to cultivate thoughts of purpose, of gratitude, of connection, watering them daily with deliberate practice. We use tools both ancient and modern. We practice mindfulness, a technique refined over millennia by monks and sages who sought to understand the nature of consciousness in their own quiet rooms. It is the simple yet profound act of noticing your own thoughts without judgment, of watching them arise and pass like clouds in the sky, It is the art of creating a space between an impulse and an action. Here, in the tight confines of our ship, that space is the most valuable territory we have. We also have neurofeedback systems, gentle pulses of light and sound that can guide our brainwaves toward states of calm or focus. We have virtual reality archives that allow us to walk through a simulated forest, to feel a digital sun on our skin, to hear the sound of artificial waves crashing on a shore that is millions of miles away. These are not escapes, but tools for recalibration. They are like bringing a sun lamp into the terrarium to remind the plants what light feels like. But the most important system for our mental health is not a technology or a technique. It is each other. We were not chosen for this mission based on our skills alone. We were chosen for our ability to form a cohesive, empathetic, and resilient whole. We are each other's keepers. We are trained to read the subtle shifts in tone, the slight hesitation in a response, the look in an eye that betrays a deeper trouble. We have protocols for conflict, not to assign blame, but to understand the root of the friction and repair the bond. To speak with what the mediators on Earth called radical candor, the difficult balance of challenging someone directly while showing that you care for them personally. In this sealed environment, empathy is not a virtue. It is a form of oxygen. To truly listen to another, to attempt to inhabit their perspective for a moment, is to introduce a fresh current of air into the system. It breaks the feedback loop of one's own internal monologue. It reminds us that our private universe is not the only one. There are other worlds just as complex and just as fragile living and breathing right beside our own. And the health of our world depends intimately on the health of theirs. There is also a great hope. We carry a psychological North Star that we navigate by. It is a phenomenon known only to the few hundred people who have left Earth's orbit, a psychological shift that has been named the overview effect. It is the experience of seeing our home planet from a distance, not as a map of competing nations and ideologies, but as it truly is, a small, fragile, and impossibly beautiful sphere of life hanging in the void. Astronauts have described it as a moment of profound, almost spiritual clarity, a sudden understanding of the interconnectedness of all life, and the utter triviality of the conflicts that consume us on the surface. We have not yet experienced it fully. Earth is still a large, brilliant disk in our sky, but with each passing day it shrinks. And as it does, we feel a subtle shift inside. We are preparing for that moment, anticipating the perspective it might grant us. We hope that it will be the ultimate fertilizer for our inner gardens, a transcendent source of nourishment that will sustain us through the long months ahead. It is the promise that by leaving our world, we might come to understand it and ourselves more deeply than ever before. To see the whole system at once is to find your own small, perfect place within it. This inner cultivation, this quiet daily work of tending to the mind, is the hidden foundation of our journey. It is a profound act of stillness and introspection. Yet for this state of delicate balance to even be possible, it first had to be born from its polar opposite. Before the silent hum of the ship, before the slow turning of the stars, all this carefully constructed inner peace had to be held firm through an experience of unimaginable violence and power. Every quiet meditation we practice now was purchased by a single terrifying and glorious moment of pure sound and fury. It all began not with a whisper, but with a roar that shook the very foundations of the world we were leaving behind, with a single breath held by a crew, a nation, and a planet. Is the human heart multiplied by millions all beating in a fragile synchronized rhythm. For every precisely machined valve and every line of flawless code, there exists an invisible network of hope, fear, and focus, stretching from the control rooms in Houston and Baikonur to the living rooms and public squares across the continents. In the final hours before the journey begins, this network becomes palpable. It is a single planetary consciousness, narrowed to a single point of intention on the coast of a sleeping ocean. And in these final moments, this global mind does something remarkable. It falls silent. It waits. It prepares to hold its breath. The countdown is not merely a sequence of numbers. It is a litany, a final centering of the soul before the great leap. Each descending integer strips away another layer of the mundane world. 10. The years of design, the arguments in conference rooms, the failed tests, and the small triumphs all coalesce into the quiet hum of the environmental controls. 9. The faces of loved ones held in the mind's eye a final silent promise. 8. The weight of history, of every explorer who ever gazed at a new horizon, every astronomer who charted the pinpricks of light in the darkness. 7. On screens around the globe, telemetry streams flow like digital rivers. Every sensor reporting its readiness, a chorus of machines singing their one perfect note, all systems nominal. At this moment, the crew is no longer just a collection of individuals. They are the tip of the spear, the focal point of a species longing. Their heartbeats, steady and strong, are broadcast to the world, the final human rhythm before the engine's fire drowns out all else. And then it begins, not with the sound, but with a feeling. It is a low, resonant tremor that starts deep in the earth and climbs the steel latticework of the tower, a vibration that finds its way through the ship's hull and into the very marrow of their bones. It is the awakening of a son born on Earth. Through the small, thick windows, the world outside dissolves into a furious, incandescent bloom of white and gold. The sound arrives a fraction of a second later, not as a noise to be heard by the ears, but as a physical presence, a crushing wave of pressure that compresses the air, the ship, and the body itself. The world outside is no longer a place. It is an event, a raw and beautiful violence. Then comes the inexorable push. The gentle hand of gravity, the only force they have ever known, is suddenly challenged by a titan. Acceleration presses them back into their seats, a giant invisible palm flattening them with a weight that grows and grows. 1G, the familiar comfort of home. Then 2. Their bodies feel impossibly heavy, their limbs made of lead. 3Gs. Breathing becomes a conscious, deliberate act, each inhale a struggle against the mounting pressure. The ship itself seems to groan under the strain, the gentle hums of its systems, now lost in the all-consuming roar of its own creation. This is the great struggle, the primal fight to escape the pull of the cradle. The held breath of humanity tightens a knot of hope and terror. Every rivet, every weld, every human calculation is tested in this crucible of fire and force. The world is nothing but vibration, sound, and pressure, a universe reduced to the raw physics of ascent. For minutes that feel like a lifetime, this is reality. But then a change. A sudden jarring kick, a lurch to the side, and a brief, almost imperceptible lightening of the load. The solid rocket boosters, their ferocious duty done, have been shed. They fall away like discarded memories, tumbling back towards the blue atmosphere below, their fire extinguished. The climb continues quieter now, driven by the pure, liquid-fed heart of the main engines. The shaking softens from a violent shudder to a steady, powerful thrum. The sky outside the windows shifts its gentle blue, deepening to an impossible indigo, then to the star-dusted black of the void. And then, as suddenly as it began, it ends. The pressure vanishes. The roar is extinguished, replaced by a silence so absolute, so profound it feels louder than the inferno that preceded it. Floating within this sudden stillness, suspended between the memory of force and the reality of freedom, there is a collective release. Across the planet, 1 billion people exhale. In mission control, stoic faces break into smiles. The crew, pinned to their seats just moments before, now feel the slow, gentle lift of weightlessness. A pen dislodged from its clip drifts lazily in the air before them, a small, mundane miracle in the cathedral of space. For the first time, one of them unbuckles from their restraint, their movements slow and deliberate, and drifts toward the main viewport. There are no words, only the soft click of magnetic boots on the floor. For the journey to Mars does not truly begin with the fire and the fury of the launch. It begins here, in this first moment of quiet contemplation, in this first look back. It begins with the sight that changes everything. And as the ship completes its first silent arc around the planet, the world they left behind reveals itself not as a vast and solid ground, but as a fragile breathing sphere of swirling cloud and impossible color, hanging alone in the dark. The great unmooring has begun. The planetary breath held for so long is finally released. It rushes out not as a sound, but as a silent, resolute thrust. For hours the ship had been a satellite of home, tethered by proximity, completing graceful 90-minute arcs around the world that had made it. The crew, suspended in the quiet hum of life support, had become accustomed to the rhythm of continents gliding by beneath them, the familiar swirl of a desert, the fractal coastline of a fjord, the electric lace of a city at night. In this orbital cradle, Earth was still the whole world. It filled the viewport with its impossible living blue, a marble of such profound beauty it seemed to demand a new word for color, a new verb for to be. You were not in space, you were simply above. But that time is over. A deep, resonant vibration runs through the spine of the vessel. A tremor felt more in the bones than in the ears. The Transmartian injection burn has begun. It is a long, sustained push, the final, decisive shove from the nest. And as the engines burn, the perspective shifts. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, at first, the world begins to recede. The coastlines that were once sharp, geographic certainties begin to soften. The sprawling networks of light that trace the paths of human civilization begin to merge, bleeding into one another until they become a gentle, indistinct glow. This is the beginning of the great unmooring. It is the beginning of what earlier astronauts called the overview effect, but experienced now with a terrifying and beautiful finality. From low orbit, the effect is one of connection, a sudden intuitive understanding of the world as a single interconnected system, a fragile whole without the divisions we draw on our maps. You see the thin, luminous membrane of the atmosphere, a delicate film of gas clinging to the surface, and understand that this fragile layer is all that separates life from the void. Every war, every symphony, every act of kindness and cruelty, all of it took place under this impossibly thin shield. But as the ship accelerates, as the distance grows from hundreds of kilometers to thousands, then tens of thousands, the effect changes. The feeling of connection gives way to one of scale. The planet no longer dominates the view. It is now a perfect sphere hanging in the blackness. The sheer crushing emptiness of the solar system begins to make itself known. You are no longer above the world. You are in the space between worlds. And with this physical distance comes a different kind of separation. Communication, which had been instantaneous, begins to stretch. The first time you notice it is in a conversation with mission control, or perhaps with a loved one in a final scheduled call. There is a lag of a few seconds. The easy rhythm of conversation, the dance of interruption and affirmation is broken. You speak, and your words travel across the growing emptiness at the speed of light. You finish your sentence, and for a moment, there is only the hum of the ship and the vast silence outside. Then seconds later, the reply begins its own journey back to you. A conversation becomes a series of transmissions. Questions hang in the void before being answered. Laughter arrives a moment after the joke has passed. The shared, simultaneous present dissolves. You are speaking to a ghost of a moment that has already gone, and they are listening to words from a person who has already moved farther away. This growing temporal gap is more profound than any visual cue. It is the sound of the cord being stretched thin, the audible signal that you are truly leaving the sphere of immediate human experience. The web of instantaneous connection that defines modern life is unraveling thread by thread with every kilometer the ship travels. And still Earth shrinks. What was once a world, then a sphere, becomes a brilliant blue and white disk, then just a disk. The continents are gone, lost to the glare. The weather patterns are gone. It is a pure platonic form of a planet, a jewel of impossible color against the velvet black. There is a deep, primal sadness in this transformation. It is the melancholy of all departures magnified to a cosmic scale. Every human who has ever lived, every mountain, every river, every memory you have ever had is contained in that shrinking circle of light. The sheer weight of that collective history presses in on you even as you move farther from it. You find yourself staring at the viewport for hours. The mind struggles to reconcile the two realities. The reality of your immediate environment, the sterile, controlled cabin, the scent of recycled air, the familiar faces of your crewmates, and the reality in the window. That dwindling point of light is everything you have ever known. It is home. And it is getting smaller. Finally, the moment arrives. Earth crosses a perceptual threshold. It ceases to be a place and becomes a light. It is no longer a disk, but a star brighter and bluer than any other, but a star nonetheless. This is the true unmooring. The sun is now the undisputed center of your visual universe, a blinding raw furnace to one side. The moon is a fainter fellow traveler in the darkness, and Earth is the third stone from the sun, a phrase you have heard your whole life, but which you only now understand in your soul. It has joined the celestial family. It is a wanderer in the dark, just as you are. Carl Sagan had tried to prepare humanity for this feeling, showing them a photograph from the edge of the solar system, a pale blue dot suspended in a sunbeam. He spoke of it as a humbling perspective-altering image. And he was right. But to see it with your own eyes is different. It is not an image. It is an experience. It is the feeling of an anchor being cut, of drifting in a great dark ocean between shores that are themselves adrift. You are now officially a creature of the void, a citizen of the in-between. The view outside the window now rarely changes. The blue star that is home will fade almost imperceptibly week by week. The other stars are a fixed, silent congregation. The raw, unfiltered light of the sun is a constant. The destination. Mars is still just another point of light, a faint, ruddy spark that grows with agonizing slowness. The journey is no longer measured by the changing view of a receding planet, but by something else entirely. With the grand spectacle of departure now complete, the infinite and the external recede, replaced by the intimate and the internal. All that is left to mark the passage through this endless, unchanging dark is the relentless, silent march of the digits on the mission chronometer. The tyranny of the clock has begun. Geet. The blue and white marble of home shrinks first to a child's toy, then to a bright jewel, and finally it surrenders its form entirely, becoming indistinguishable from the other distant brilliant stars. The umbilical cord of gravity is severed. The final comforting landmark is gone. Now there is only the forward vector, an arrow of intention pointing through an infinite, unchanging blackness. And here, in this profound and silent emptiness, a new authority rises to govern the lives of the crew. It is not a commander's voice, nor the laws of a distant nation. It is the tyranny of the clock. On Earth, time is anchored to the world. It is measured by the slant of light through a window, the changing of seasons, the intuitive rhythm of day and night. The sun rises and sets a grand celestial clock that reassures us of the world's turning. But here, there is no sunrise. There is only the ship's artificial dawn, a gentle programmed brightening of the lights that lacks the soul of a true morning. There is no weather, only the constant filtered hum of the environmental controls. The view outside the viewport is static, a masterpiece of stillness painted with the cold light of stars that will not visibly move for weeks or even months. The cosmos does not offer a schedule. It offers only eternity. Without these external cues, the human mind begins to drift. Subjective time. The feeling of time passing becomes a treacherous and fluid thing. An hour spent on a critical repair can feel like a fleeting minute, while a 10-minute wait for a data transmission can stretch into a personal epoch. The days threaten to melt into one another, a long, undifferentiated smear of existence between two worlds. The greatest danger in this long transit is not a system failure or a micrometeoroid. It is the slow, creeping erosion of the self that comes from living in a state of timelessness. And so, the crew submits to the clock. They build their lives around its unyielding metronomic pulse. The 24-hour cycle, a memory of a spinning planet, is imposed upon the void with fierce devotion. The ship is no longer just a vehicle. It becomes a monastery, floating in the abyss. Its inhabitants are not merely passengers. They are monks of a new order, their devotion directed toward the sanctity of the schedule. Their day is a liturgy of small repeated acts. The morning begins not with a prayer, but with the litany of system checks. Each crew member moves through the hushed corridors to their station, their movements practiced and economical. They commune with their machines, reading the quiet language of data streams and diagnostic reports. They are listening to the ship's body, checking its pulse, its respiration, its temperature, ensuring the health of the vessel that is for all intents and purposes an extension of their own. Then comes the tending of the garden. In the hydroponics bay, under the warm purple glow of the grow lamps, is the only other life for millions of miles. Here time reasserts itself in a more organic form. The slow, determined unfurling of a lettuce leaf, the gradual swelling of a tomato on the vine, these are miracles in the sterile environment. To cultivate this small patch of green is an act of defiance against the void. It is a ritual of patience, a reminder of the quiet biological clock that ticks within soil and seed, a rhythm they carry within their own cells. The air here smells of damp earth and chlorophyll, an almost sacred scent in the metallic purity of the rest of the ship. Physical exercise is the day's most demanding rite. Strapped to treadmills and resistance machines, the crew fights the relentless decay of muscle and bone that comes with weightlessness. It is a grueling 2-hour penance, but it is more than just medicine. It is a way to feel the body again, to reclaim a sense of weight and effort in a world where such things have no meaning. The rhythmic thud of feet on the treadmill, the strain of a muscle under load, these are anchors grounding the mind in the physical reality of the self when all external reality has become abstract. Even meals reconstituted and carefully rationed become moments of communion. The crew gathers in the small galley, sharing the same food, the same filtered water, the same recycled air. They share stories, small jokes, and silences. They look at the faces of their companions and see their own humanity reflected back. This ritual of breaking bread together shores up the boundaries of the self, reinforcing the fact that they are not alone in this immense solitude. As the ship hurtles through space at tens of thousands of miles per hour, it creates a subtle paradox of time. According to the laws of relativity, the faster one moves through space, the slower one moves through time. The difference is infinitesimal, a matter of milliseconds over the entire journey. But it is real. Their clocks, the very source of their sanity and order, are ticking just a fraction slower than the clocks of every person they left behind on Earth. They are not only separated by an ever-widening gulf of distance, but by a sliver of time itself. They are aging, breathing, and living at a pace subtly different from that of their entire species. With every tick of the ship's chronometer, they are drifting further into a future that is uniquely their own, a private timeline unfolding in the dark. This is the deep truth of their monastic life. The routine is not just about staving off boredom or maintaining psychological health. It is a way to give meaning to this temporal schism. By filling each programmed minute with purpose, with science, with maintenance, with self-care, with community, they transform the tyranny of the clock into a framework for grace. They are not just enduring the passage of time, they are inhabiting it, consecrating it, making the long, empty journey a destination in itself. But the clock, for all its power to organize the inner world, offers no protection from the outer one. The meticulous order it imposes exists within a fragile metal shell, a bubble of human intention surrounded by an environment of pure, indifferent chaos. The rituals provide a shield for the mind, but the hull provides the only shield for the body. And as the weeks turn into months, a new awareness begins to settle in a feeling as subtle as the relativistic slowing of their clocks. It is a sense that the silence outside is not entirely empty. The order they have so carefully constructed is a response to a chaos they can see and measure. But there are other forces at play in the void whispers that travel on particles and waves indifferent to the meticulous schedules kept within the ship, the lives of those who travel here. This new authority is not a person, nor a set of written rules. It is the void itself. It is the unblinking absolute physics of deep space, a sovereign realm with laws that are immutable, unforgiving, and utterly indifferent to the fragile, warm-blooded life that dares to cross it. Its first decree is a profound lesson in sensory deprivation. Outside the hull, there is a silence so complete it is not merely an absence of sound, but a presence, a heavy-weighted quiet that would crush the mind long before the vacuum could claim the body. It is a darkness that does not just obscure, but is the fundamental state of things, a black canvas against which the distant fiery stars are but fleeting exceptions. Inside the vessel, this external reality is a constant unspoken truth. The crew lives and breathes and works within a bubble of manufactured normalcy, the gentle hum of the environmental controls, the soft glow of instrument panels, the recycled air carrying the faint, familiar scent of metal electronics and human life. Yet they are always aware of the boundary. A few inches of metal and ceramic composite is all that separates their delicate ecosystem from an environment more hostile than any earthly desert, any polar ice cap, any abyssal trench. The ship is not just a vehicle. It has become an extension of their own skin, a hardened technological carapace, protecting the soft vulnerability within. This new authority, the void, does not rule with overt force. It rules through whispers. It sends messengers invisible and tireless across the gulf. The first of these is an ethereal rain of particles, a constant flow of cosmic radiation born from the death of ancient stars' supernovae that exploded millions of years ago halfway across the galaxy. These particles, the stripped nuclei of atoms, travel at nearly the speed of light. They are infinitesimally small, yet they carry a fierce energy. They pass through the hull of the ship, through the bodies of the crew, leaving microscopic trails of disruption in their wake. They are a form of erosion on the scale of biology, a slow, steady weathering of the complex machinery of DNA. The ship, in its wisdom, has a defense. It generates a magnetic field, a silent, invisible shield that deflects the majority of this cosmic sleet, creating a pocket of relative safety in its wake, much like the magnetic field of Earth protects the entire biosphere. This shield is the ship's immune system, constantly working, consuming power, holding back a tide that never ceases. Then, there are the more violent outbursts, the tempests of this empty ocean. The sun, the anchor of their journey, and the source of all life they have ever known, is also a source of profound danger. Without warning, it can unleash a solar flare, a colossal eruption of plasma and radiation that travels outward in a wave of invisible force. On Earth, the atmosphere and magnetosphere would absorb and diffuse the blast, turning its fury into the gentle dancing lights of the aurora. But out here there is no such buffer. A powerful flare caught unprotected could be lethal. And so the ship is also a storm cellar. Its sensors are a network of nerves, a sensitive skin that constantly tastes the solar wind, listening for the energetic crackle that precedes a storm. When the alarm comes, it is not a panicked siren, but a calm, measured tone. The crew retreats to the central core of the vessel, to a heavily shielded shelter where layers of water and dense materials provide a final redoubt against the sun's temporary rage. They wait in quiet solidarity as the storm passes over them, feeling nothing but knowing through the readings on their screens that a torrent of invisible energy is washing over their tiny ark. In these moments, they are reminded that the star that gives them warmth and direction is a wild, untamed thing, and their survival depends not on fighting it, but on respectfully hiding from its power. The void's other whispers are more tangible, yet just as subtle. The space between planets is not truly empty. It is filled with a fine dust of micrometeoroids, the debris of creation. Most are no larger than a grain of sand, tiny relics from the formation of the solar system orbiting the sun on their own silent billion-year journeys. They are too small to be tracked, too numerous to be dodged. They are simply a statistical hazard, a constant low-level threat. But in the calculus of space velocity is everything. A grain of sand traveling at 50,000 miles per hour carries the kinetic energy of a rifle bullet. The journey to Mars is a long one, and over millions of miles the low probability of an impact becomes a near certainty. The crew has grown accustomed to the faint pings that occasionally echo through the hull. It is a sound unlike any other, a sharp, instantaneous report with no reverberation as a tiny projectile vaporizes on impact with the ship's outer shielding. Each ping is a whisper from the void, a reminder of the universe's casual, thoughtless violence. The first few times a new crew member hears it, their heart leaps. They check the pressure gauges, their eyes, scanning for any sign of a breach. But they learn, as all deep space travelers do, to accept the sound. They come to understand it as the ship simply doing its job. The hull is a multi-layered skin, a design of deliberate sacrifice. An outer layer, the Whipple shield, is designed to absorb these impacts, to shatter the micrometeoroid into a harmless cloud of plasma before it can reach the main pressure vessel. The ship in this way bears its scars. Its outer surface, if one could see it, is covered in microscopic craters, a testament to its passage through this invisible battlefield. It is a living shield taking thousands of tiny wounds so that the life inside can continue undisturbed. The crew develops a strange protective affection for their vessel. They listen to its hums and groans, its clicks and pings, as one might listen to the breathing and heartbeat of a sleeping guardian. They trust its metallic skin, its electronic nervous system, its silent, powerful heart. It is their entire world, a microcosm of life and order, holding its own against the vast, silent chaos that surrounds it. This constant gentle tension, the awareness of the ever-present danger, held at bay by the ever-vigilant ship, does not breed fear. Instead, it cultivates a deep and abiding humility. It is a constant meditation on fragility and resilience, a reminder that survival is not a given, but a state of grace, a delicate equilibrium maintained by ingenuity, vigilance, and trust. The ship's sensors, which listen for the hiss of solar radiation and register the impact of cosmic dust, are pointed outward forever, guarding against the hazards of the journey. But they are also pointed forward toward the destination. The same instruments that protect them from the present are also their eyes into the future. While one part of the system analyzes the solar wind for threats, another part gathers faint radio waves, collects spectroscopic data, and builds an increasingly detailed picture of the world that awaits them. The ship's duty is twofold: to be a shield against the void, and to be a lens through which a new world can be seen. And so, as the days and weeks turn into months, the crew's attention begins to shift. Protected from the immediate whispers of the void, they are now free to listen for a different kind of signal, the faint, promising murmur of their destination. They begin to turn away from the data that speaks of survival and toward the data that speaks of arrival, using the ship's senses to reach across the remaining distance and begin to know a planet they have only ever dreamed of, the lives of those who travel here. This new authority is not a person, nor a set of written rules. It is the void itself. It is the unblinking absolute physics of deep space, a sovereign realm with laws that are immutable, unforgiving, and utterly indifferent to the fragile, warm-blooded life that dares to cross it. Its first decree is a profound lesson in sensory deprivation. Outside the hull, there is a silence so complete, it is not merely an absence of sound, but a presence, a heavy, weighted quiet that presses in on the ship from all sides. And in this profound external silence, the inner world begins to speak. The human imagination, starved of novelty, turns inward and then forward, building a world from memory, from hope, and from the steady incoming stream of data that describes the destination ahead. For months, Mars has not been a place, but a concept built from light and numbers. It is a world that exists in two distinct parallel forms for the crew. The first is the Mars of data, a planet rendered in the cool, dispassionate language of science. This Mars lives on their screens a mosaic of information assembled by the orbiters and rovers that came before. It is a world of topographic maps where shades of blue and red denote not water and land but elevation. The dizzying depths of Valles Marineris and the imposing height of Olympus Mons. It is a world of spectroscopic charts that catalog the surface with inhuman precision, revealing deposits of hematite clay and sulfate as if they were ingredients listed on a label. They study thermal inertia maps, learning which ground will hold the day's meager warmth and which will surrender it to the thin night. They memorize atmospheric pressure curves, seismic activity reports, and radiation flux charts. This data Mars is intricate, knowable, and utterly sterile. It is a ghost planet perfectly described, but without a soul, a collection of facts waiting for a consciousness to give them meaning. And so, the crew provides one. They construct the second Mars, the Mars of dreams. This world is built in the quiet moments between system checks and exercise protocols, in the shared glances, over a rehydrated meal, in the solitary hours spent staring at the star-filled viewport. This dream Mars is where data is transmuted into experience. A spectral signature for iron oxide is no longer just a wavelength of light. It becomes the imagined grit of red dust under a gloved finger, the rich ochre color staining the white fabric of a spacesuit. A topographical map of the landing site ceases to be a set of contour lines and becomes a landscape. The crew walk through it in their minds, feeling the gentle slope of the crater floor, gauging the distance to a nearby ridge, and picturing the way the shadows will lengthen as the distant sun begins to set. They take the dry atmospheric data and paint a sky a pale pinkish canvas, during the day a deep violet blue at twilight, perhaps graced by the ghostly silver of a dust devil spinning in the distance. This act of collective dreaming is not left entirely to chance. It is aided by the most powerful tool for imagination aboard the ship, the simulator. In a small, dedicated module, crew members can don a headset and be transported. One moment they are inside a sterile metallic enclosure. The next, they are standing on the rust-colored plains of Meridiani Planum. The twin moons Phobos and Deimos hanging like pale diamonds in the black sky. The simulation is a marvel of engineering, built from every piece of data ever gathered about the planet. The ground beneath their virtual feet corresponds perfectly to the geological maps. The light painstakingly rendered accounts for the scattering effects of fine dust in the thin atmosphere, casting soft, eerie shadows. They can walk for kilometers, practice driving the rover over challenging terrain, and rehearse the deployment of scientific instruments until the motions are second nature. Yet for all its fidelity, the simulation is a beautiful lie, and they all know it. It is a ghost of a different sort, a phantom of experience, without the substance. The virtual sun on their visor imparts no warmth. The simulated wind that whispers through the canyons carries no chill, no scent of ancient alien dust. The gravity is still the familiar 1G of the ship's rotating habitat, not the strange, buoyant lightness that awaits them. The simulation is a rehearsal, an invaluable tool for preparation, but it serves another deeper purpose. It sharpens the ache of anticipation. It makes the dream Mars more vivid, more tangible, and in doing so amplifies the longing for the real thing. To stand in a perfect replica only makes one yearn for the imperfect, unpredictable truth. Every session ends with a quiet, lingering sense of incompleteness, a hunger for the authentic touch, the true silence, the genuine light of a world they have traveled across an ocean of night to meet. This longing is the emotional engine of the final leg of their journey. Mars is no longer just a mission objective. It has become a character in their story, a silent partner in this long dance through the void. It is the destination that has justified a lifetime of training, of sacrifice, of relentless focus. For the geologists, it is the library of an entire planet's history, its pages written in layers of rock and ice waiting to be read. For the astrobiologist, it is the most promising place in the solar system to ask the oldest question, are we alone? For the commander, it is the ultimate operational challenge, the culmination of a career spent at the very edge of human capability. But for all of them together, it has become something more. It is a promise. It represents the collective dream of a species that has always looked to the lights in the sky and wondered. Now, as the ship closes the final 1,000,000 kilometers, the two versions of Mars are beginning to merge. The data is no longer historical. It is real-time. The telemetry from the planet's surface is now a live feed of weather and radiation, a direct report from their future home. And the dream, once a hazy, distant vision, is becoming sharp and urgent. The abstract beauty of their imagined world is about to be tested against the unforgiving physics of atmospheric entry. All the data they have memorized, all the simulations they have run, all the dreams they have dreamt, they have carried them this far. But they cannot slow the ship by a single meter per second. The long, quiet months of contemplation are over. The slow, patient work of building a world in the mind must now give way to the violent, kinetic work of arriving there. The dream is about to meet reality, and the bridge between them is a path of fire through the sky. Everything they have worked for, everything humanity has hoped for in this venture, now depends entirely on a perfect sequence of automated events, a flawless choreography of heat shields, parachutes, and retro rockets. It all comes down to a few minutes of breathtaking, terrifying precision, a fall from orbit where faith must be placed not in dreams, but in mathematics. The laws of the void are absolute, but they are simple. They are the laws of momentum, of inertia, of the long, patient coast through nothingness. But now that sovereignty is challenged, the vessel, a tiny emissary of human thought, approaches a new domain, one governed by a different, more complicated set of rules. It is approaching the atmosphere of Mars, a veil of gas so thin it is barely a whisper. Yet it is this whisper that will decide everything. For a machine traveling at over 12,000 miles per hour, this whisper is a wall of sandpaper, a barrier of friction and fire. The journey across the silent gulf is over. What begins now is a different kind of journey, one measured not in months, but in minutes. 7 minutes. Engineers on Earth, whose calculations now fly embodied in this metal shell, have a name for it. They call it the 7 minutes of terror. It is the period from atmospheric entry to touchdown, a sequence so complex, so fast, and so far away that it must be performed entirely by the machine itself. The light speed delay between Mars and Earth means that by the time the signal confirming the start of the sequence arrives, the lander will have already either succeeded or been destroyed. It is a pre-recorded drama of physics, a ghost story told in arrears. But to see it only as terror is to miss the deeper truth. It is also an act of profound trust. It is 7 minutes of faith. Faith in numbers, in materials, in code. Faith that the abstract language of mathematics can be translated into a physical choreography of such precision that it can safely deliver a fragile payload through a gauntlet of incandescent plasma and aerodynamic chaos. The silence of deep space is about to be broken by a scream, but within that scream is a hymn to reason. The first touch is almost imperceptible. A few stray molecules of carbon dioxide ghosts in the vacuum tap against the heat shield, then a few more, and then, in a rush, the near-nothingness becomes something. Friction awakens. The spacecraft, for so long a creature of pure momentum, is now an aerodynamic body, fighting a battle against a rising tide of gas. A faint vibration shudders through its frame, the first tremor of the violence to come. Outside, the view is transformed. The blackness is torn apart by a sheath of light. The ablative heat shield, a masterpiece of material science, begins its sacrificial work. It is designed to burn, to flake away, layer by microscopic layer, carrying the ferocious heat of re-entry with it. The temperature on its surface climbs to thousands of degrees hotter than molten lava. The craft is encased in a bubble of plasma, a man-made star streaking across the thin pink sky of Mars. Inside the protective aeroshell, the lander is a seed of fire being planted in new soil. The deceleration is brutal. The vessel is slammed by immense G-forces, as if a giant invisible hand were crushing it against the planet. Every strut, every weld, every circuit board is tested to its absolute limit. This is the first great filter, a trial by fire and force. The mathematics had to be perfect. Too steep an angle, and the craft would burn up completely. Too shallow, and it would skip off the atmosphere like a stone on water, cast back out into the hopeless emptiness of space. But the calculations hold. The trajectory is true. The fiery seed holds its course. After what feels like an eternity, but is only a few minutes, the ordeal of peak heating is over. The vessel has bled off more than 90% of its cosmic velocity, but it is still moving at over 1,000 miles per hour, still falling too fast. The air is now thick enough for the next act of this intricate ballet. Deep within the aeroshell, explosive bolts fire. A mortar shoots out a tightly packed bundle which blossoms in the Martian sky. It is the parachute, a vast canopy of red and white fabric, designed to survive deployment at supersonic speeds. The opening is a controlled violence. The parachute catches the thin air with a tremendous crack, a sound that would be like a cannon shot in the thin atmosphere. The deceleration is immense, a sudden violent jerk that strains the tethers to their breaking point. The craft, now dangling beneath this beautiful engineered flower, sways as it continues its descent. The great heat shield its primary purpose served is jettisoned. It falls away like a singed scale, and for the first time the lander's own instruments can see the world below. Radar pulses begin to map the terrain, tasting the shape of the rusty, rock-strewn ground, searching for the pre-selected landing zone. It is a moment of revelation, the machine opening its eyes after its trial by fire. But a parachute alone is not enough. The Martian atmosphere is simply too thin to slow the craft sufficiently for a soft landing. And so, the most audacious part of the plan begins. At an altitude of just over a mile, the parachute is cut away. The lander, now separated from its back shell, is in free fall. For a terrifying second, there is only the pull of Martian gravity. Silence. A fall. Then a new sound. A roar. 8 retro rockets mounted on a powered descent stage above the lander ignite in a blaze of hydrazine fuel. This is not a dumb fall. It is now a powered flight. The machine is actively flying its onboard computer, processing the radar data in real time, steering the craft away from large boulders and steep slopes. It is an act of autonomous intelligence, a mind of silicon and software, making thousands of decisions per second, millions of miles from its creators. On Earth, the mission controllers can only watch the telemetry data with their hearts in their throats. They are spectators to a drama that has already concluded. Their faith is all they have. The ground rushes up. At 60 feet above the surface, the final, most delicate maneuver begins. This is the sky crane. The powered descent stage, the crane, hovers on its engine plumes, its rockets, kicking up clouds of ancient red dust. From its belly, it begins to lower the lander itself on a set of 3 nylon tethers. It is a sight of surreal elegance, a roaring, hovering machine gently lowering its precious cargo to the ground like a celestial spider placing its young on a new world. The lander's legs unfold, ready to meet the surface. The final few feet are an eternity. The dust cloud billows obscuring the view. The onboard computer waits for a signal for the feeling of touch. And then, contact. The wheels settle into the rusty soil. The weight of the lander is registered. For a fraction of a second, the lander and the sky crane are connected, a bridge between flight and ground. The computer sends its final command. Explosive bolts fire one last time, cutting the tethers. Freed from its burden, the sky crane, its purpose fulfilled, pushes itself away with a final burst of thrust. It flies off to crash at a safe distance, its spectacular suicidal job complete. And then, silence. A new kind of silence. Not the absolute featureless silence of the void, but the silence of a place. It is a silence filled with the presence of rock, of dust, of a sky. The faint Martian wind, the only sound, whispers over the hull. The violence is over. The fire has been tamed. The 7 minutes have passed. The faith has been rewarded. The internal systems hum quietly, running their final checks, reporting their status to a world that will not know for many minutes yet. All is well. The seed has been planted. The journey through fire and darkness is complete, and a new journey is about to begin. Now all that is left is to open one's eyes. After the cold numbers of physics and the heat of entry, a new reality waited ready to paint the first color of a different world upon a waiting lens. 1,000 kilometers per second had been bled away by that whisper, traded for heat and roar, and a shudder that vibrated through every bolt and seam of the lander. And then, as quickly as it began, it was over. The violence of arrival gave way to a silence so complete, so absolute that it felt like a physical presence. Inside the cramped cabin, the only sounds were the soft hum of the scrubbers cleaning the air and the measured rhythm of two human hearts beating just a little faster than normal. The dust kicked up by the final descent began to settle outside the small quartz-paned viewport. It fell like a slow red snow, gradually revealing a world that no human eye had ever seen directly. For a long time there was no movement, only waiting. Waiting for the systems to confirm stability, for the internal pressure to equalize, for the dust to fully clear, and for the mind to catch up with the body. You are here. The thought was not a triumphant shout, but a quiet, fragile acknowledgement. You are here. The depressurization sequence was a familiar hiss, a mechanical sigh that had been practiced 1,000 times in simulations. But this time, it was the prelude to something real. The inner hatch opened, then the outer, and through the opening a ladder extended, touching the ground with a soft metallic thud that was felt more than heard. A rectangle of light fell into the airlock, a light unlike any other. It wasn't the brilliant, clean-edged light of space, nor the soft, diffuse blue-filtered light of Earth. It was a pale, ancient illumination, the color of weak tea tinged with pink. It was the light of a distant sun filtered through a thin carbon dioxide atmosphere, carrying the color of the ground it reflected upon. It was the light of Mars. The first boot was placed on the ladder's top rung. Every movement was slow, deliberate, a conscious act of will against the tide of adrenaline. Down one rung, then another. The suit felt clumsy and confining, yet it was a sanctuary, a tiny bubble of Earth's air and warmth. Through the helmet's faceplate, the view was restricted, framed like a masterpiece in a gallery. And the masterpiece was a single dominant color. It was not the simple red of a child's crayon. It was a symphony of reds, a palette that spoke of time and chemistry. There was the deep ferrous rust of oxidized iron, the color of dried blood and ancient decay. There was the soft, gentle ochre of fine-grained dust, a color like powdered clay. And under the strange thin light, these tones were warmed by a faint, buttery butterscotch glow, as if the sun itself were weak and amber. The world was a canvas of muted fire. The final step was from the last rung of the ladder to the surface itself, the boot sole patterned with a tread designed for this exact moment, pressed down. There was no firm thud, no hard impact. Instead, there was a soft, satisfying crunch, like stepping on frozen sand. The foot sank an inch, maybe two, into a material finer than sand, a dust ground down over billions of years by a wind that was barely a breeze. And then the feeling. It was a feeling of being unburdened. The body, accustomed to a lifetime of fighting Earth's relentless pull, suddenly found the battle half as difficult. The one-third gravity of Mars was not a floaty, bouncing sensation, but a gentle, pervasive lightness. The helmet, which on Earth felt like a heavy weight on the shoulders, now seemed to rest with the pressure of a gentle hand. The simple act of standing upright required less effort, less muscular tension. It was a quiet physical whisper of liberation, a loosening of a bond that had held every ancestor who had ever lived. With both feet planted on the ground, the first true sensation of Mars could be absorbed. It was not the color, not the gravity, but the silence. On Earth, even in the most remote desert or the deepest snow-filled forest, there is always sound. The whisper of wind, the hum of an insect, the distant call of a bird, the subtle vibration of the planet itself. Here, there was nothing. An absolute, profound, and primordial quiet. The only sounds were the ones brought from another world, the gentle whir of the suit's internal fans, and the soft, rhythmic sound of one's own breathing magnified in the confines of the helmet. It was a silence so deep, it felt like it had weight, a silence that had reigned over these landscapes for 4 billion years, and was now for the first time being interrupted by the faint sound of a human breath. Slowly, a turn was made a full 360 degrees. The horizon was disconcertingly close, a trick of perception caused by the planet's smaller radius. It made the world feel both vast and intimate at the same time. In the distance, the rim of the crater they had landed in rose up like a set of eroded gentle mountains, their slopes softened by eons of dust deposition. The landscape was a sweeping vista of rolling, subtle dunes and fields of scattered dark rocks, likely volcanic basalt peeking through the red dust like islands in a ruddy sea. Looking up, the sky was not the comforting blue of home, but a pale, pinkish tan haze. It was a shy sky, thin and fragile. The sun was a small, sharp, brilliant white disk, its corona clearly visible against the muted backdrop. There were no clouds, no contrails, no birds. Just the vast, empty canvas of the tenuous atmosphere. It was beautiful, but it was an austere, alien beauty. It was the beauty of geology, of physics, of time itself. It did not invite life. It recorded its absence. This was not a dead world. It was a dormant one, a world caught in a long, quiet sleep. Every rock, every grain of dust, every sweeping curve of the landscape was a word, a sentence, a paragraph in a story of unimaginable length. A story of a time when water may have flowed, when the atmosphere was thick, when this quiet red world might have been a louder, bluer one. The wonder of the moment was not just in seeing it, but in feeling its history. To stand on Mars was to stand in a library where all the books were written in stone and dust. The first explorer knelt down the suite, flexing with a soft groan. A gloved hand reached out the sterile synthetic material, hovering just above the ancient soil. The mission was not just to stand here to see this. The mission was to understand. The feeling of awe of being the first began to recede, replaced by a different, more focused sensation: curiosity. The vast planetary panorama resolved into the patch of ground just a few feet away. Here, the colors were even more varied. Streaks of darker, almost black sand were mixed with the ochre dust. A small, angular pebble, its edges still sharp, suggested it had not traveled far. Another was smooth and rounded, hinting at a long-lost current of water or wind. The entire planet was a text, a red book laid open its pages, filled with a language of minerals and isotopes of stratigraphy and erosion. And the task now, the great privilege, was to begin to learn its grammar, to read the first sentence. The silence that followed the landing was not empty. It was a presence of vast and ancient quiet that pressed against the lander's thin hull, a stark contrast to the thrumming life support systems within. For long minutes, the only sound was the measured exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide and the soft, syncopated rhythm of two human hearts. Then, slowly, as if waking from a dream, one of them unbuckled and floated toward the small, quartz-paned viewport. Outside, the universe had painted a new canvas, not the star-dusted velvet of deep space, but a landscape of profound stillness drenched in a light the color of faded rust and old honey. It was a world of rock and dust stretching to a horizon that seemed both impossibly close and infinitely far. There were no trees to mark the passage of wind, no clouds to scud across the sky, no glint of distant water. There was only the land itself, a surface that had been waiting undisturbed for aeons. To the untrained eye, it might have looked desolate, a monochrome wasteland. But to the trained eyes peering from the lander, it was something else entirely. It was a book, the greatest, oldest, and most mysterious book humanity had ever opened. Every rock was a word, every crater a punctuation mark, every layer of sediment a sentence in a story that began 4.5 billion years ago. The mission was not one of conquest, but of translation. They were here to read the Red Book of Mars. The first few days were a study in patience, a ritual of calibration. Instruments that had slept for months were gently coaxed awake, their electronic senses stretching out to taste the thin atmosphere, to feel the faint magnetic field, to listen to the whisper of seismic tremors from deep within the planet's core. The rover, folded neatly in its bay, performed its own elegant origami, in reverse unfolding its wheels, its mast, and its complex arm, preparing to become their hands and eyes on this new world. The work began, not with a grand gesture, but with a quiet hum. The rover rolled down the ramp, its wheels leaving the first deliberate tracks in dust that had not been disturbed since the last great windstorm, perhaps centuries ago. Each movement was planned, each destination chosen with the care of a historian approaching a priceless, fragile manuscript. The initial targets were simple: a nearby rock, unassuming, and half-buried its surface scoured by billions of years of wind carrying fine, abrasive sand. The drill on the rover's arm whirred a tiny, almost profane sound in the immense silence, and extracted a core sample no bigger than a piece of chalk. Inside the lander's mobile lab, that small cylinder of compressed dust and minerals was treated with a reverence once reserved for holy relics. Under the electron microscope, its fine layers were revealed, a delicate stratigraphy telling a tale of wet seasons and dry of volcanic ashfalls and slow, patient erosion. The spectrometer fired its lasers, vaporizing infinitesimal grains to read their chemical composition, the elemental alphabet of the planet's past. They were searching for the most elusive signatures in the cosmos, the faint chemical ghosts of life. Not bones or fossils, but complex organic molecules, specific isotopic ratios, mineral patterns that could not be easily explained by geology alone. They were looking for a single anomalous word in a library of stone. From their small haven of warmth and breathable air, they directed their proxy across the plains, their minds soaring over landscapes they would never walk themselves. They steered the rover to the edge of what was once a great river delta, a place where billions of years ago water had carved elegant meandering channels into the rock before pooling in a vast basin. The ground here was different. composed of fine-grained clays and rounded pebbles tumbled smooth by a current that had long since vanished. Here, the pages of the book were rich with possibility. If life had ever taken hold on Mars, it would have been here in the fertile mud of this ancient shoreline. The rover's instruments tasted the soil, searching for the lingering biochemical memories of a world that might once have been blue. Their minds also journeyed further, guided by the high-resolution maps from the orbiters that had preceded them. They flew in their imaginations along the length of Valles Marineris, a system of canyons so vast it would dwarf the Grand Canyon, stretching 1/5 of the way around the entire planet. It was not a feature carved by water, but a colossal tectonic wound, a crack in the Martian crust that laid bare billions of years of geological history in its towering walls. Each stratum of rock was a different chapter, a violent volcanic age written in dark basalt, a quieter period recorded in light-colored sulfates, a mysterious era of water and ice etched into hydrated clays. The entire history of a planet's torment and tranquility was exposed there, waiting for a reader. And then there was Olympus Mons, the great shield volcano, a feature so enormous it defied terrestrial comparison. It did not rise to a peak so much as it swelled a gentle continental-sized dome that rose 3 times higher than Mount Everest, its base broad enough to cover the entire state of Arizona. It was not just a mountain. It was a statement, a testament to a time when the planet's heart was hot and its crust was still allowing a single volcanic plume to build layer by patient layer for hundreds of millions of years until it nearly touched space. It was the planet's own epic poem, a monument to a fire that had long since gone out. The daily rhythm of the mission was one of deep contemplative work. Wake-check the lander's systems, analyze the data from the previous Sol's rover activities, plan the next traverse. Every decision was a careful balance of risk and reward. Should they drill this rock or the one 100 meters away that seemed to have a more promising texture? Should they spend a full day analyzing one sample in detail or gather many more for a broader survey? They were the planet's first librarians, carefully cataloging its contents, knowing they would only ever be able to read a few precious pages. But as the sols turned into weeks, a new awareness began to settle in one that had little to do with geology or the search for ancient microbes. The sheer scale of the book they were reading began to exert its own kind of psychological gravity. The billions of years etched into the rock, the continental-sized canyons, the silent colossal mountains, it all served as a constant humbling reminder of their own infinitesimal presence. They were 2 brief sparks of consciousness in a world of silent geological time. The science was exhilarating, the purpose clear, but the planet's story was one of endings. The story of a lost atmosphere, of vanished oceans, of a warm heart that had grown cold. And as they read this immense, lonely story written across an entire world, they could not help but feel the profound weight of their own isolation. Reading the Book of Mars was one challenge, but they were also beginning to write the first sentence of a new and entirely different story, the story of humanity living on another world. And for that, they had to do more than just explore. They had to build. They had to turn this small metal shell from a temporary lander into a home, to transform this patch of alien dust into the first human outpost beyond the Earth. The grand intellectual quest of reading the planet's past had to be grounded in the urgent practical reality of surviving its present. Outside, the universe had painted a masterpiece of desolation, and for the first time, humanity was there to see it not as a distant jewel, but as the ground beneath its feet. The silence held them for a long time, a quiet pact between two souls at the edge of everything. But silence, even one so profound, could not last forever. Work, the oldest human ritual, was waiting. The great dream of arrival had ended, and the long, slow reality of staying had begun. The first days were not marked by grand steps or historic speeches, but by the hum of machinery and the careful unfolding of robotic assistance. Before a human foot could press into the ochre dust, the machines went first. They were the true pioneers, extensions of human will, built to taste the air and test the soil. A rover low and wide like a metallic beetle, detached from the lander's belly, and rolled down a ramp, its cameras swiveling to map every rock and ripple in the sand. It was followed by a drill, a gleaming silver spike designed to probe beneath the surface, seeking the frozen breath of ancient water. This was the first tenet of their new existence: learn to live off the land. The concept had a name forged in sterile earth laboratories: in situ resource utilization, but here, on the rust-colored plains of Chrysoplanitia, it was simply called survival. They watched on monitors as a device affectionately nicknamed the Alchemist began its slow, miraculous work. It drew in the thin Martian atmosphere, a ghost of an air made almost entirely of carbon dioxide, and through a process of high-temperature electrolysis, it began to split the molecules. It was in essence a mechanical tree. It inhaled what was toxic to humans and exhaled what was life itself, pure precious oxygen. The first metric tons were not stored for breathing, but as an oxidizer, the vital ingredient for the rocket fuel that would one day be their only ticket home. It was a paradox of the highest order to stay. They first had to ensure they could leave. Simultaneously, the drill found what the orbital scans had promised: subsurface ice locked away meters below the dust, a relic of a wetter, warmer Mars. The rover's heaters gently melted the ancient frost, and the first liquid water on the planet's surface, in millennia, trickled not into a riverbed, but into a sterile collection tank. This water, filtered and purified, would be split again, yielding more oxygen for the habitat and hydrogen for fuel. The red planet, so seemingly dead, was giving them air to breathe, water to drink, and a way to return to the world of blue skies and running rivers. They were not conquerors. They were dependents, learning the secret language of a world that had not known life for eons. With the basic elements of survival being slowly harvested from the alien ground, the construction of their home could begin. The habitat was not a single monolithic structure dropped from the sky. It was grown layer by layer from the very soil they stood upon. A team of autonomous 3D printing rovers, moving with the patient, synchronized grace of a colony of insects, began their work. They scooped up the Martian regolith, a fine iron-rich dust, mixed it with a binding polymer brought from Earth, and began to extrude the walls of the main dome. Day after day, the structure rose. A soft circular foundation became a low wall, which then curved inward to form a protective shell. It looked organic, less like a piece of engineering, and more like a chrysalis taking shape on the vast empty plain. Inside this printed shell, an inflatable pressurized module was deployed, the soft protected core where life would be lived. Connecting tunnels were extended, linking the main habitat to the lander, the science lab, and the power station, a small field of solar panels that unfolded like black flowers, turning their faces to the faint, distant sun. When it was finally time to enter, the moment was stripped of ceremony. They cycled through the airlock, the familiar hiss of pressure equalization, the only sound. And then, they stood inside a space built of Mars itself. The light that filtered through the thick, translucent dome was soft and red-tinted the light of a perpetual sunset. For the first time on this new world, they unsealed their helmets. The air smelled clean, sterile, a carefully balanced mix of nitrogen and oxygen with the faint metallic tang of machinery running in the background. It was the scent of manufactured life. And in that moment, the true scale of their isolation descended not as a fear, but as a quiet physical weight. They were two people breathing their own recycled air, drinking their own recycled water inside a fragile, luminous bubble on the shore of a silent cosmic ocean. Every system, every pump, every seal was a thin line between this small pocket of warmth and the lethal vacuum and radiation outside. They were the most technologically advanced castaways in history, shipwrecked on a world of wonders, and yet utterly reliant on the machines that kept them alive. The Earth was no longer a world. It was a point of light in the sky, a brilliant blue-white star that rose and set visible only at twilight. It was a beautiful, heartbreaking reminder of a home that could offer no help, no rescue, no comfort, but the knowledge that it was still there. The first few weeks were a rhythm of checks and double checks of calibrating sensors and organizing supplies. But slowly, the shelter became a home. A small hydroponic tray was set up, and the first green shoots of lettuce and herbs pushed their way out of the nutrient gel, a defiant splash of vivid green against the overwhelming red. They unpacked personal items, a worn copy of a book, a photograph of a green forest, a small hand-carved wooden bird. These tiny illogical artifacts of a distant biosphere became their anchors, talismans, against the immense inhuman scale of their surroundings. They shared their first meal, not from nutrient packs, but from a small plate sitting at a small table. It was a simple act, yet it felt like a declaration. We are not just surviving, we are living. This outpost, the loneliest in human history, was their entire world. From its windows, they watched the slow dance of the two tiny Martian moons, Phobos and Deimos, streaking across the star-dusted sky. They saw dust devils spin across the plains like fleeting ghosts. They learned the contours of the distant crater rim, as well as they knew their own hands. This small bubble of life, this testament to ingenuity and will, was proof that humanity could endure. But survival, they were beginning to understand, was only the first step. To truly take root, to honor the journey that had brought them here, was a far greater challenge. Looking out at the endless expanse of red, they saw not an ending, but a canvas. They had built a shelter to protect a single precious garden, the garden of their own lives. Now, the quiet question began to form in their minds. Could they one day learn to plant a second? Could they tend to the planet itself and help it breathe again? The first days were not marked by grand gestures or heroic speeches, but by the quiet, meticulous unfolding of a plan that had been dreamt of for over a century. It was a plan that felt less like an engineering project and more like the first lines of a poem written in a language the universe had not yet heard. Humanity had arrived not with the force of a conqueror, but with the patience of a gardener approaching a vast and fallow field. The dream was not to build a monument, but to plant a seed. In the sterile confines of the habitat's biolab, shielded from the unfiltered radiation and the profound cold, the work began. It did not start with giant mirrors in orbit or atmospheric processors churning on the plains of Acidalia. It started with a single drop of water held suspended in a nutrient gel under the warm white light of a full-spectrum lamp. Within that drop, invisible to the naked eye, swam the architects of a new world, Coccidiopsis. These were cyanobacteria, ancient and unimaginably resilient, harvested from the driest deserts and the coldest rocks of Earth. They were life at its most stubborn, its most elemental. On their homeworld, they had spent 3 billion years patiently oxygenating the atmosphere, preparing the stage for everything that followed. Here on Mars, they were being asked to perform their slow miracle once more. This was the first principle of the great work, to begin at the beginning, to not impose a biosphere, but to coax one into being. The grand vision of terraforming, the slow, deliberate transformation of an entire planet, was an act of supreme optimism, an inheritance passed down to a future that could not yet be imagined. The first generation of Martians knew they would never walk under a blue sky or feel rain upon their faces. Their role was to be the groundskeepers of a planetary nursery, tending to the microbial seeds of a world they would never see. The plan was a symphony in 3 movements, each lasting centuries. The first movement was to give the planet a blanket. Mars had an atmosphere, but it was a ghost, a whisper, less than 1% the density of Earth's. The key was to thicken it, to give it substance. Automated rovers, slow and tireless, were dispatched to the poles. There, under the permanent caps of water ice, lay vast deposits of frozen carbon dioxide. Using focused sunlight and microwave emitters, the rovers began to gently sublimate this dry ice, releasing the gas into the air. It was a delicate process, like slowly letting air into a vacuum chamber. Too fast, and the planet's weather systems would be thrown into chaos. Too slow, and the precious gas would be stripped away by the solar wind before it could accumulate. For decades then, a century, this silent work would continue, molecule by molecule, adding a fragile layer of insulation to the cold red world. With the blanket came the second movement, the warmth. As the atmosphere thickened with greenhouse gases, it would begin to trap more of the sun's faint energy. The average temperature of the planet, a forbidding -63 degrees Celsius, would begin a glacial, almost imperceptible climb. A degree every 50 years, then a degree every decade. The colonists charted the progress not on calendars, but on geological timescales. They were watching a planet slowly awaken from a 4 billion year slumber. The goal was to reach the melting point of water, the magic threshold where the third and final movement could begin. That movement was the dream of water, the return of the rivers. Mars was not a dry world, but a frozen one. An ocean's worth of water was locked away in its polar caps and buried as permafrost beneath the soil. As the planet warmed, this ancient water would be liberated. First, as seasonal trickles in the deepest canyons of Valles Marineris, then as ephemeral lakes in the basins of Hellas Planitia. The colonists watched the satellite data with a kind of religious reverence, searching for the first dark stains of damp soil, the first glint of sunlight on a liquid surface. The day the first stable pond formed would be a planetary holiday, a celebration of a world beginning to breathe again. When that water flowed, it would carry with it the patient extremophiles from the labs seeding the barren soil with the promise of life. Lichens would follow clinging to rocks, their slow alchemy breaking down the regolith into the first true soil. Then mosses green and soft, a vibrant shock of color against the endless red. This was the dream, a garden tended over 1,000 years. But with this dream came a question, one that echoed in the quiet moments between shifts, in the long gaze out at the unchanging horizon. It was a question of immense moral weight. Did they have the right? Humanity had long seen itself through two competing lenses, the preserver and the creator. On Earth, the role had increasingly become one of a frantic preserver, a guardian of a fragile Eden that its own actions had imperiled. Conservation, restoration, protection. These were the virtues of a species that had learned its destructive power. But here, on a world that was for all intents and purposes sterile, that identity felt hollow. There was nothing to preserve. Mars was a magnificent, desolate canvas. To leave it untouched felt like a failure of imagination, a denial of the same creative impulse that built cathedrals and composed symphonies. Yet to change it felt like an act of cosmic arrogance. Who were they to decide that this silent red world would be better with green trees and blue oceans? Was its desolation not a form of perfection in itself? Was there not a unique and untouchable beauty in its sterile silence? By seeding it with terrestrial life, they were extinguishing the possibility, however remote, of a native Martian biology, a life built on different principles waiting to be discovered deep beneath the surface. They were overwriting a book before they had even learned to read its language. There was no easy answer. The debate was not one of science, but of philosophy of humanity's place in the cosmos. The colonists lived this question every day. They were both preservers and creators. They preserved the pristine wonder of the canyons and craters, cataloging every rock and every gust of wind with meticulous care. And at the same time, in their sealed labs, they cultivated the seeds of its transformation. They held two contradictory ideas in their minds, a profound reverence for Mars as it was, and a profound hope for Mars as it could be. They were the stewards of a paradox. This slow generational work, this epic act of gardening, did more than just change the planet. It began to change them. The timescales they operated on reshaped their perception of life and legacy. Their purpose was not tied to their own fleeting existence, but to the deep, slow pulse of a world being born. They were planting a garden for their great-great-grandchildren to one day walk in. This perspective cultivated a unique psychology, a fusion of profound patience and relentless hope. And as they worked to give Mars a new atmosphere, they breathed the thin, recycled air of their own habitat. As they dreamt of future oceans, they rationed every drop of water. While they planned for a biosphere, they lived in a machine. They were intimately tied to this world, yet utterly separate from it. Every action, every thought was filtered through the lens of this strange and beautiful exile. In their effort to reshape Mars in the image of Earth, they failed to realize the more immediate truth. It was Mars that was already reshaping them. The planet was not a passive canvas. It was a force, a presence. And as they tended to their nascent garden, they had to wonder what strange and resilient seeds was the red planet planting in the soil of the human soul. For a time, the story of Mars was a story of arrival. It was a tale of engineering and endurance of crossing the great silent ocean between worlds. But with the first habdome sealed and the first hydroponic tray showing a faint trace of green, a new story began to unfold. One not of arrival, but of becoming. The seed that was planted was not only in the red regolith, but in the human genome itself. For the first time, humanity was not just on another world. It was beginning to be of another world. And this transformation, subtle at first, would redefine what it meant to be human. The change began in the bones. In a place where gravity pulls with only a third of the force of the old world, the human body, that master of adaptation, begins to rewrite its own architecture. The first generation of settlers felt it as a strange and welcome lightness, a spring in their step that never quite vanished. But for their children, the first true Martians born under a pink sky, this lightness was not a novelty. It was the only reality they had ever known. Their skeletons would grow longer, more delicate, more gracile. Their spines would lengthen without the constant oppressive compression of Earth's embrace. Their muscles, no longer needing to fight such a relentless downward pull, would become leaner, more efficient, suited for endurance rather than brute strength. They would develop a unique gait, a flowing, almost bounding stride, an effortless lope perfectly suited to the low gravity and the wide open plains. They would be taller, thinner, a new and elegant silhouette of humanity. But this physical change was only the surface. The deeper change was one of perception of the soul. Consider the first child to open their eyes not to a blue sky, but to the soft, filtered light of a geodesic dome with the crimson expanse of the Aryan landscape stretching out to a razor-sharp horizon. This child would learn of Earth as a place of myth. It would be the shimmering bright star in their night sky, a beacon of origin, but not a home. They would watch archival footage from the old world with a sense of profound and bewildering alienation. Imagine them, this Martian child, watching a video of an earthly ocean. To them, a world where water exists in such terrifying, uncontrolled abundance would be incomprehensible. The crashing waves, the sheer, chaotic power of a tide would seem monstrous. Their own world's water was a sacred, precious commodity, cycled and recycled with near-religious care, each drop accounted for. To see it thrown about with such abandon would be a form of cosmic blasphemy. Imagine them watching a documentary about a rainforest. The overwhelming green, the cacophony of a billion living things, crawling, flying, and growing over one another in a frantic struggle for light. The very air thick with moisture and pollen and the scent of decay and life would seem suffocating. To a child raised in the sterile, controlled, and quiet environment of a Martian habitat, where the only sounds were the gentle hum of life support and the soft scuff of boots on metallic floors, the earth would look like a beautiful but terrifying wilderness. A paradise perhaps, but a paradise of crushing gravity and overwhelming dangerous life. They would hear stories of walking barefoot on grass, of feeling rain on their skin, of swimming in a lake. And these experiences would be as fantastical to them as tales of fire-breathing dragons are to an earth-born child. Their relationship with gravity itself would be inverted. They would learn in their physics lessons that they lived in a shallow gravity well. They would see videos of their ancestors on Earth moving with what looked like immense painful effort. They would wonder how anyone could bear such a weight day after day. Earth, the cradle of their species, would seem less like a gentle mother and more like a possessive giant holding its children down with an invisible, unbreakable grip. The idea of returning there to the home of their grandparents would be a medical and psychological impossibility. Their hearts, adapted to pumping blood in a low-G environment, would struggle. Their bones, lacking the necessary density, would risk fracture. They would be exiles of gravity, forever bound to the light embrace of their new world. And from this new body and new perception, a new culture would inevitably bloom. Language would evolve, sprouting new words to describe the dozen shades of red in the evening dust, the particular quality of silence in a lava tube, or the feeling of seeing Earth rise over the crater rim. Their art would not be of sweeping landscapes of green hills, but of the stark geometric beauty of their own life-sustaining technology. Their heroes would not be warriors conquering new lands, but engineers who could diagnose a fault in an atmospheric processor by its sound alone, or biologists who could coax a new variety of potato to grow in the difficult soil. Their entire philosophy of existence would shift. On Earth, humanity had the luxury of seeing itself as separate from its environment, a conqueror of nature. On Mars, such a view would be a death sentence. Humanity and its technology, and the thin, fragile biosphere they maintained, were one and the same. The line between organism and machine, between self and system, would blur. Every breath taken was a gift of the recycler. Every meal was a product of a meticulously balanced ecosystem under a dome. This total interdependence would breed a deeply communal mindset. Individualism, as Earth knew it, might be seen as a dangerous indulgence. Your life depended absolutely on the person next to you doing their job correctly, and theirs on you. Trust, responsibility, and systems thinking would become the highest virtues. This growing colony, this fledgling civilization of new humans would look back at their ancestral home with a complex mixture of reverence, curiosity, and a kind of gentle pity. They were the children who had left home not in rebellion, but in evolution. They were becoming something new, something forged in the red dust and the thin air under the light of a distant smaller sun. They were the Martian condition made manifest. And as this new human condition began to solidify as their bodies and minds and values diverged from the old earthly patterns, a profound question would begin to surface in their quiet communal halls. The old ways of being were no longer sufficient. The old stories no longer fit. It became clear that a new kind of human required a new kind of society. The very structures built to govern and organize life on a world of abundance and division were ill-suited for this new world of fragile shared existence. A people whose very biology had been reshaped by their environment could not simply import the laws and politics of the past. They would need to invent their own. For a time, the story of Mars was a story of arrival. It was a tale of engineering and endurance of crossing the great silent ocean between worlds. But with the first habdome sealed and the first hydroponic tray showing a faint trace of green, a new story began to unfold, one not of arrival, but of becoming. The seed that was planted was not only in the red regolith, but in the human genome itself. For the first time, humanity was not just on another world. It was beginning to be of another, and to be of a place is to be bound by its rules, not just the laws of physics, but the laws we make for ourselves. In the quiet, humming corridors of the first settlement, beneath the constant low-grade radiation and the thin pink sky, the most profound engineering challenge was not one of machines, but of society. How do you govern a handful of souls on a world where a single cracked helmet means death for one, and a failed atmospheric reclaimer means death for all? The very air was a shared utility, a public trust. The water, endlessly recycled, passed through every body, every system, a closed loop connecting each person to their neighbor in the most intimate way imaginable. On Earth, one could speak of private property, of individual rights, to resources of economies built on limitless desire. Here, such concepts felt like artifacts from a distant, almost mythical past. The first law of Mars was interdependence. It was not a philosophy to be debated, but a physical reality to be obeyed. This truth shaped every conversation that followed. The historical models brought from Earth, democracy, socialism, corporate governance, all seemed ill-fitting, like heirloom clothes from a world with different gravity. They were designed for populations of millions, for nations with deep histories of conflict, and cooperation for economies of perceived abundance. Here there were only a few dozen people, then a few hundred. Every single person was a critical system, a repository of irreplaceable skills. The chief botanist was as vital as the reactor technician, the geologist as essential as the physician. And so, new questions arose in the common rooms, spoken in hushed tones after the day's work was done. Should a vote on water rationing be decided by a simple majority when the minority would face dehydration? Should the authority to seal a dangerously contaminated section rest with a single commander or a council? These were not abstract political science problems. They were immediate matters of survival. The social contract was not a dusty philosophical text. It was the daily logged agreement of who would perform which maintenance check, of who would take the greater radiation risk on an external repair, of how the precious few hours of personal time would be allocated. Parallels were drawn to the isolated communities of Earth's past. The Antarctic research stations, where scientists from rival nations lived in claustrophobic harmony, bound by the unforgiving cold outside. The early seafaring expeditions, where a captain's word was law, but a mutiny born of desperation was always a possibility. The monastic orders of old, which created intricate rules for communal living, subordinating the individual for a higher shared purpose. Each model offered a piece of the puzzle. From the Antarctic stations, the Martians learned the power of scientific rationalism as a common language. From the sailors, the necessity of a clear chain of command in a crisis. From the monks, the importance of ritual and shared belief in maintaining psychological cohesion. But Mars was different. It was not a temporary stay. It was meant to be permanent, a new branch of the human family tree. This meant that the rules could not be designed for a temporary state of emergency. They had to be robust enough to handle birth and death, crime and punishment, love and betrayal. What would justice look like on Mars? There were no prisons to speak of, and exile was a death sentence. A crime against one's neighbor was a crime against the integrity of the habitat itself. Justice would have to be restorative, not punitive, focused on mending the delicate social fabric that was as vital as the dome's triple-paned glass. And then there was the long shadow of Earth. The colony was not born in a vacuum. It was the product of immense investment of national pride and corporate ambition from the world it had left behind. For now, its existence depended on the fragile supply chain that snaked across 100 million miles of space. Resupply ships brought advanced components data and new colonists. But they also brought expectations. They brought the political and economic pressures of the home world. Was the colony a sovereign entity, or was it merely the most remote of Earth's territories? The 8-minute communication delay was a curious thing. It was long enough to force local autonomy to make every urgent decision a Martian one. But it was short enough to allow for oversight, for requests and demands from mission controllers and boards of directors who would never feel the grit of the red dust or breathe the carefully managed air. This tension between independence and dependence became the central political drama. The first generation of Martians, those who had endured the journey and built the foundations, felt the world in their bones. They understood its rhythms, its dangers, its stark beauty. They began to see themselves not as Americans or Chinese or Russian, but simply as Martians. But new arrivals brought the old world with them, carrying its identities and its unresolved conflicts in their hearts. The risk was immense that this new world would become nothing more than a new arena for old arguments, that the first Martian conflict would be a proxy war for a terrestrial squabble fought with scientific sabotage instead of weapons. The dream spoken of only in the quietest moments was of a true second Genesis, not just of life, but of civilization, a chance to get it right, to build a society based on evidence, empathy, and the shared, undeniable truth of a fragile existence in a vast and indifferent cosmos. To create an economy not of accumulation, but of stewardship. To define wealth not by what one owned, but by what one contributed to the collective survival. A society where the highest status belonged not to the richest, but to the most reliable, the most ingenious, the most compassionate. Yet woven into that dream was the thread of human nature, the desire for status, the fear of loss, the pull of tribal identity, the subtle corruptions of power. Could these be legislated away? Could a perfectly rational system contain the irrational passions of the human heart? Or would the old ghosts find new homes in the red dust? The colonists were living in the most unforgiving environment known to humanity, and yet the greatest danger was not outside the habitat, but within it. The true terraforming project was not about warming the planet and thickening its air, but about reshaping the internal landscape of the human spirit. These questions were the invisible architecture of the new world frameworks being built day by day, decision by decision. From the floor of the common room, looking out through the viewport at the silent ochre plains stretching to the horizon, the path forward was a labyrinth of impossible choices. The weight of this creation, this responsibility was immense. To see the way clearly, perhaps one needed a different perspective, a longer view. Perhaps to understand the laws of a new world, one must first ascend to its highest point, and from that quiet summit, look down not just upon the sprawling land, but back across the unfathomable ocean of space and time that had brought them there. World a native of two. The story of Mars became the story of humanity's second great chapter, written not on paper, but in the slow, patient terraforming of a planet, and in the quiet evolution of a soul that could call two skies its own. And so, we travel forward, not in ships, but in imagination. We move through seasons that are twice as long, through generations that have never known the scent of rain on rich, dark soil, but have learned the unique melody of wind across the Valles Marineris. We arrive at last at a time and a place that was once only a distant dream, the pinnacle of this new world. Imagine standing there, not in the near future, but in a time when the journey has settled into history. You are on the summit of Olympus Mons, the great shield volcano that slumbers near the Martian equator. The ground beneath your boots is not the fine, shifting dust of the plains, but hard volcanic rock scoured by winds too thin to make a sound you can hear. It is a silence so profound, it feels like a presence. Here, 25 kilometers above the mean surface level, you stand on the highest point in the entire solar system. The air is a ghost of an atmosphere, a gossamer thin veil of carbon dioxide so tenuous that the sky above is not the pale butterscotch of the Martian day, but a deep, bruised violet, already darkening to the black of space. The sun, smaller and more distant than the one in humanity's memory, cast long, impossibly sharp shadows that stretch for hundreds of kilometers. Your own shadow is a stark, elongated figure, a human glyph etched onto the ancient face of Mars. Inside your suit, the only sounds are the gentle hum of the recycler and the soft, rhythmic puff of your own breath. It is a lonely sound, the sound of life in a place where life was never meant to be. But it is not a desolate sound. It is a sound of triumph, of persistence, a quiet testament to the indefatigable spark that drove a species of clever primates to leave their garden world and set foot upon the heavens. You look down, and the scale is difficult for the mind to process. The caldera of the volcano is a vast collapsed bowl, nearly 80 kilometers across. From this height, the curvature of Mars itself is visible. You can see the world curve away from you, a silent, rust-colored sphere hanging in the void. You see the faint outlines of canyons and plains that have become as familiar to your generation as the continents of Earth were to your ancestors. You see the faint, shimmering lights of settlements nestled in craters, shielded from the thin atmosphere's lack of protection. Tiny constellations of human hope on an alien shore. Each light is a story of birth, of love, of science, of art. A story of learning how to belong to a world that was not made for you, and in doing so, remaking yourselves. And then you look up. You search the star-dusted velvet of the sky. It is a sky of magnificent clarity, undimmed by thick air or city lights. The Milky Way is a brilliant textured river of light, but you are not looking for nebulae or distant galaxies. You are looking for a single specific point of light. And there it is, not as bright as Venus from Earth, but steady, unmistakable. It shines with a gentle pale blue light. It is Earth. From here, it holds none of its majestic marbled beauty. There are no swirling white clouds, no deep blue oceans, no patchwork of green and brown continents. It is simply a star among other stars, but it is the most important star in your sky. It is the star of origin, the star of memory, the anchor of your entire species. And standing here, bathed in the faint ancient light of your ancestral home, the true meaning of the journey settles upon you. You understand that this drive, the one that brought you here to this impossible summit, was never about escape. Humanity did not come to Mars to flee a dying world, but to answer a question that has echoed in its heart since the first hominid looked up at the moon and wondered. The question is not can we, but what is next? It is the same impulse that pushed life out of the primordial oceans and onto the land. The same restlessness that led humans out of the Great Rift Valley to populate every corner of their globe. The same curiosity that built telescopes to peer into the hearts of stars and microscopes to uncover the secrets of the cell. It is the fundamental algorithm of life to reach, to explore, to expand the boundaries of the known, to see what lies over the next hill, beyond the next ocean, and finally across the next sea of stars. Looking at that tiny blue point, you feel an overwhelming sense of perspective. All of human history, every war and every peace treaty, every cathedral and every poem, every act of cruelty, and every moment of sublime compassion, all of it happened on that mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. Its fragility is breathtaking. From this vantage point, you see Earth not as a planet to be conquered or exploited, but as a cradle, a precious, beautiful, and irreplaceable cradle. A famous theorist from the old world, a pioneer of the dream that you now inhabit, once said, "Earth is the cradle of humanity, but one cannot live in a cradle forever." Standing here, you understand the deep truth of that statement. A cradle is a place of safety, of nurture, of beginnings. It is essential, but its purpose is to prepare the child for the world beyond. To stay in the cradle forever is to refuse to grow, to deny the potential that lies within. Humanity did not abandon its cradle. It learned from it. The journey to Mars was a crucible that forced humanity to perfect its understanding of ecology, of closed-loop systems, of cooperation, and resource management. The lessons learned in keeping a handful of people alive in a metal can, crossing the void, and then in a dome on a frozen desert, were lessons brought back to heal and protect the home world. The act of leaving allowed humanity to finally see its home for what it was. Mars is not a replacement. It is an expansion of what it means to be human. To have two worlds in your heart, two histories in your bloodline, is to have a richer, deeper understanding of your place in the cosmos. You are a child of the blue star and a pioneer of the red. And in that duality, a new consciousness is born. One that is less tribal, less territorial, and more aware of the immense, silent, and beautiful universe in which it is privileged to exist. A gentle vibration in your glove reminds you that your time on the summit is ending. The sun is dipping below the horizon, and the swift, deep cold of the Martian night is beginning to settle. You take one last look at the pale blue star. It does not seem so far away now. It is not a lost home, but a constant companion. A light that says, "This is where you began." And the red earth beneath your feet replies, "But this is where you are going." You turn and begin your slow descent back to the warmth and light of the settlement below. The journey is not over. The journey is never over. It is simply a long, unbroken chain of footsteps from one world to the next, forever reaching toward the stars. And in the quiet hum of your life support, in the steady beat of your own heart, you carry the legacy of every explorer who ever dared to dream. You are the promise of a species that chose not to be an end, but a beginning. A bridge between a planet and its solar system. A small, courageous step into the great unfolding story of the universe.